Good afternoon, everybody. If you're in the East Coast, good morning to those on the West Coast, good noon to everybody else in between. Welcome to this exclusive webinar from Disperse on leveraging generative AI for L&D success. My name is Subbu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Disperse. We are a learning, skilling, and talent mobility platform. And I'm excited to be here with an elite panel of Ken and Jim, who will introduce themselves to you in some time, and to share our perspectives on how we could use generative AI for L&D transformation. Let me share my screen. I actually asked ChatGPT 2 minutes before we started this webinar, give me a joke on generative AI. And this is the joke that it gave. I hope you liked it. I hope you don't drop off. Let me start with a little bit of an introduction about myself. My name is Subbu. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Disperse is my third venture. I now complete 15 years in entrepreneurship, over a dozen years in bringing learning technology for social impact. I love to study applications of tech and particularly AI on work and society. I've been into the world of software programming since I was 14 when I wrote my first commercial software. I have a 2-year-old son, so naturally parenting is one major topic of interest. So is growth, how to grow your company. We are now at an interesting stage as a startup, and generative AI of late. These are 3 topics that we are learning now, and that I am learning now personally. And talking about parenting and growth, if I were to teach my son something or write a book about something, this is the topic that I would choose. I love Spot. I don't know how many of you used Spot to actually read books to your toddler kids. This is the next book I would recommend to the person who created Spot: How to Grow People, or How to Scale Business, or How to Scale Businesses. Now, coming to the topic at hand, I'm very intrigued by the topic of generative AI, and we've coined the term "prompted by the human eye," created by generative AI. It really is a wonderful tool. I believe this is a huge revolution. It's as big as computing itself. And through the course of today's presentation and interaction with our super exciting panel, you will see how this can actually be quite game-changing for us as L&D practitioners and HR practitioners. So going through the theme, here is an example of what generative AI did for me. There was a flood in my city recently, and I lost my car to the floods. So I started a search of new cars, and I was a little disillusioned by the experience of buying cars, because I have a chauffeur-driven car, and I just thought none of the cars were designed to be chauffeur-driven. So I asked generative AI, I asked ChatGPT, can you design a car for me which is for rear seat use? And here is what it threw up. It's a very interesting design. It actually removed the front seat and it made the rear seat slidable. What an exciting application of generative AI. And I just gave it 5 lines of instructions, and this is the output that it came. Fantastic. It just blew my mind away. Here are some exciting designs of cars that it came up with. Think of a car with a without a door, with just glass in between instead of the doors. How would that look? Some beautiful designs here. So these are examples of what generative AI can do for you. And over the course of the next hour, I will go through certain other use cases where you can come up with such exciting output for you as in your day-to-day work as an L&D professional. Now, let me pause for a moment and introduce our lovely panel to you. We have Jim and Ken. Jim, you want to please introduce yourself first?
Sure. Well, I've headed up HR, or as I like to call it, people, for a variety of businesses, mostly airlines and restaurants. Most recently, a brand new airline called Avelo. You haven't flown it yet. Hopefully, you'll have a chance to soon. Prior to that, I've headed up HR for Hawaiian Airlines, Red Lobster, and Westin Hotels in Starwood back in the day.
Nice. Thank you very much, Jim. Welcome to the panel. Look forward to hearing from you. And you must have seen technology change over the years. I'm very keen to hear about what you think about this little toy called generative AI.
Oh, it's so much more than that.
Yep. Yes, Ken, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Subbu. And, one thing you learn over the career is don't burn any bridges. Jim and I worked together 40 years ago, starting out in the HR profession, and have remained friends. So great to see you again, Jim, and work with Subbu on Disperse. So happy to be here. My current chapter is co-founder of FutureSolve, and we're a company that really focuses on leveraging talent and technology to help the mid-cap companies with their business issues and provide solutions around leadership and culture transformation, and leveraging generative AI and ChatGPT in their processes, which we're really looking forward to talking about today. Subu has a 2-year-old son. I have 3 children Subu's age. So, but my focus is continuous learning, and the opportunity to work with FutureSolve and work with these mid-cap companies is great, and to participate in this panel, really looking forward to it. So, thanks for the opportunity. Look forward to having some fun today.
Thank you very much, Ken. Look forward. Excellent. I'm going to start with a little icebreaker question. Why don't you type on chat? Are you using ChatGPT for work? So not an example of how you used it for organizing a party or for anything else. How did you use ChatGPT for work, and what did you use it for recently? Please type on your chat. Ideas for learning. Interesting. To write more professionally. Yep. Add creativity.
Yeah, a lot of learning opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. So starting points, icebreakers, to create job aids, that's a good one. You can actually write job descriptions with ChatGPT. Assistance with analysis, that's a good one. Image associations for learning topics, code examples, creating assessments, writing resumes, creating fun and games. Awesome. So before we go on to possibilities of GenAI, I want to start with the panel. So Kim, what is the one thing you're excited about and one thing you're concerned about generative AI?
Well, there's probably more than one thing on each of them, but I'll start with the concerned. I read recently in some research by McKinsey where 40% of the workers can expect their roles to be expanded, significantly changed in the next couple of years. And the concern I have is that seems like a reasonable forecast. And
Yep.
are we prepared, in the HR function and in business leaders to kind of how do we take advantage of that? And so on the one hand, with that concern, I'm excited in that I really think generative AI can help HR accelerate the learning process. A colleague of mine says, trends are his friend. And here, it's clear. ChatGPT is moving forward. Generative AI is going to be here. And so how do we in the HR function really leverage it to accelerate the learning opportunities to help those individuals expand into those roles that are changing? How do they, how does the HR function kind of help create with management development opportunities, with resourcing and sourcing talent? And then the other thing I'm excited about is I've always been, and Jim knows this, a strong believer in looking at new ways of getting insights. And I think generative AI can help in HR's ability to understand the workforce better, quicker, faster with analytics. And so, yes, there's some concerns, and I think there's a lot of things to be excited about.
Thanks, Ken. And there's a separate section today. I'm going to talk about what skills HR and L&D can pick up today so that their jobs don't vanish. Jim, how about yourself? What is the one thing about?
I'm actually concerned and excited about the very same thing, and that is change. So I'm excited about change because of the transformative capability of Gen AI to really touch almost everything we as human beings do. And when you look at, the last, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years of humanity, we just keep on figuring out new ways of doing things that make our lives better, make our lives last longer, bring more joy, adventures, experiences, everything to humanity. And we do that over and over. And that's all about change and improvement. At the same time, we have a history as a species of sometimes resisting change, not being so excited about it. We're scared of it, maybe. We're worried that we'll lose our jobs. We're worried that, something bad will happen to us. And change sometimes does bring those kinds of things, but then we work through it and we find goodness on the other side, just like folks used to take care of, horses and buggies, found jobs after that. So I think that concerns me as well. And I'll plant one seed for all of us in the field we practice in. The secret to change, from my perspective, is inclusion, is bringing people in, helping them see the possibilities, helping them to plan the implementation, helping them to design and flow into the new world. When they're a part of it, change tends to, if not go away, almost go away. So those are my both things. excited and concerned about how well we adopt, manage, and implement change associated with Gen AI.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm so happy both Jim and Ken spoke positively about change, and you're such seasoned CHRs and you're still not scared of change. I find that to be inspiring. Thank you very much. All right, here's what we'll cover today. We'll first start with what the hell is GenAI, a little bit of the technicalities without getting too technical about it. What's GPT? What's a large language model? Then we'll go on to what capabilities of GenAI can be applied to learning and development use cases. Specifically, what problem can it solve for you on a Monday morning? Both for you as an L&D practitioner, as well as what you can expect from technology platforms like Disperse. And next is the core question that both Jim and Ken touched on, which is what AI skills do you need to survive this change? The good news is you can actually ride the wave. Your job may not be under threat because currently ChatGPT and generative AI are co-pilot tools. But if you use them well, you can actually be a thought leader. So we'll talk about 2 specific skills that you will need to develop to actually become a GenAI practitioner. So let's get started. I asked GenAI to actually write a 4-line poem on what it is, and this is what it came up with. And I said, if you're an alien who's landed on the planet, what would you tell the alien about what generative AI is? And this is what it said. I'll let you read this. But essentially, just a basic definition is generative AI or large language models are artificial intelligence systems that can create new content. Till now, AI was about classification and prediction. It said if you had a cat image and a dog image, it would say this is a cat and this is a dog. But now it can actually create a cat. You can say create a cat that is brown in color with black and white stripes. You can actually create stuff with it. That's the big breakthrough about generative AI. It can actually generate stuff. And it does that by learning from a large data set. When I say large, it's monstrously large. And I'll tell you how monstrously large it is. And one of the beautiful things with it, one of the most exciting things with it is, for the first time in the history of computing, you're talking to a computer in a language that we all understand, English. And this is called a prompt. So if you think about a traditional model like y equals mx plus c, it's also a model. Or a more involved model that has multiple variables as a single cellular algorithm, as a single cellular organism. GPT-4, which is the latest large language model that powers ChatGPT, is like a blue whale. It's a trillion times bigger than that, and not just bigger; it's trillion times bigger in complexity. A blue whale can do a lot more than what a single cell can. So that's what it is in terms of complexity. So if you're interested in the technicalities, this is the logarithmic scale of how the natural language models have actually progressed with time. This is a logarithmic scale, which means it's not a linear scale; it's a logarithmic scale. And the more recent ones, ChatGPT is powered by a model called GPT 3.5, and that runs a trillion floating point operations. So essentially, it's a very, very, very large model that's trained on a lot of information from the internet. So think of it very simply as a large computer that has read almost the entire internet. And it can answer any question to you based on what the internet has. It's read the entire internet. So that's what it is. Obviously, there are some downsides to it. It's also according to certain authors, read some of their books, some of their proprietary books, and some authors are actually suing OpenAI and Microsoft for alleged copyright violations. But let's leave that aside. The fact is, it knows a lot. It knows a lot about text. It's read a lot of text. It's seen a lot of images. It's listened to a lot of audio. As simple as that. And therefore, when you prompt it something, it has the ability to generate something based on what it's learned. Now, each big tech company has come up with its own version. It all started when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, which is the commercial name for the model that's called GPT 3.5. It's been in the works for the last 5 or 6 years. In fact, we as a company at Disperse had evaluated the earlier GPT models. It was not ready for prime time. We really could not use it for anything. And out came ChatGPT, and the entire world changed. Similarly, Meta and Facebook have developed their own large language models called Llama. Google has something called Gemini, which is commercialized as Bard, and Anthropic, which is a large language model company, has a model called Claude. But essentially, it's all the same thing. You give it some sort of a prompt, which is simple English. Think of it as your super smart assistant that you never had, that you had for $20 a month, and it could give you an output. And that output is damn good. And one of the beautiful things about generative AI is prompting is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's the best way to interact with the computer. It can almost be your companion. All right. So, quick question for Ken and Jim. How have you leveraged ChatGPT or generative AI for any L&D or HR operations for you so far? Have you tried it at work? I know you probably not CHRO anymore, but have you tried it at FutureSolve, for example, Ken?
Yeah, for us, I can speak to it in a couple of ways. We've used ChatGPT on upgrading and keeping current our intellectual property. And so it's been real helpful in, whether it's performance management systems or culture transformation, intellectual property we have, keeping that current with what the current trends are and where things are going. It's been a great tool that our COO has helped us with keeping forward. From our company standpoint, on the HR operations, we've looked at it a couple different ways. From a preventative standpoint, we've been working with some companies around building policies and processes around how you can use ChatGPT and how you can't use or shouldn't use ChatGPT at the workplace. And to Jim's point, keep creating that inclusion and transparency so that your employees and teammates are aware of how it can be used effectively and not going down a path that people shouldn't go. And then on the L&D, it's just got so many great opportunities for learning and accelerating teammates' ability to kind of upgrade and update their skills, whether it's going in program design, development design, is one way, and then also just making it more available for people to learn in real-time situations, which clearly has had a positive impact on companies that we've been working with. So again, we're bullish on again, worked effectively, how it can help the HR function, help companies do better.
Nice. I like the fact that you're already thinking about GenAI policies at work. That's interesting. Jim, have you used it for any HR day-to-day operations so far?
A little bit, and I everything Ken said makes sense to me, and done a little bit of that. But I think if GenAI was a book, we're kind of reading the preface now and are looking forward to getting into the first chapter. Mostly we've used it for text purposes, both in doing some initial research and summarizing a topic. Okay, so you start to get lay of the land. But then we've actually taken copy that a human being has written and said, make this better. And it is a superb editor. It tends to make things simpler and clearer and so forth. Not always, but often you end up with a better communication. That can include handbooks, it include offer letters, templates, things like that. Just making it as readable and understandable as possible. It's a great editor.
That's it. Yeah, I think using it as a summarizer or as an editor is a fantastic use case. So, GenAI, as I said, can do a lot for you both as an L&D practitioner in your day-to-day job. It can make you smarter, or it can give you additional brain power that you never had. And what I've always noticed is we've interacted with at least 3,000 companies over the last 8 years of existence. We serve 500 of them today. Probably more than 3,000 is what we've interacted with. And the number of people in the L&D teams is usually 80% of the cases just one. In some cases it's two, in very few cases it's three. So the cool thing about GenAI is it can actually give you the additional horsepower, the additional bandwidth that L&D never had. And likewise, it can do a lot for tech vendors like Disperse. So I'm going to talk about both. So when you think about GenAI, you can summarize that in terms of just 5 capabilities. It brings to you 5 core capabilities. The first is text generation, the ability to generate text. Second is the ability to analyze. It's actually pretty good at looking at data and inciting it for you. That's a very differentiated skill, if you ask me. It can also generate image for you. And we will focus over the course of this interaction along these 3 use cases. But there are a couple of other things that are also useful. One is audio generation, which technically is a special case of image generation, and code generation, which may not be of interest to you. But these are 5 high-level core capabilities. I'm going to focus on the first three. So here is what, here are some certain things that ChatGPT can do for you. On text generation, it can act as your summarizer, the way Jim said. It can act as your instructional designer. And I'm going to go do a deep dive on each of these right now. On analysis, it can actually act as your learning analyst or your ROI partner. On image generation, it can act as your creative designer. It can also act as your motion graphics designer, although that capability is sort of in early days. So let me spend 3-4 minutes on each of these. I'm going to give you real examples of how you could use it at work. Let me start with how you could use it as a summarizer. So here is what's called a purple paper that Disperse publishes. Disperse's white papers are called purple papers because they are less in text, they are more data-led, and they are a lot more easier to consume than traditional long reams of text. And what I did was I just took one of our recent purple papers on the business case for investment in skilling technology, and I said, just summarize this paper for me. I just uploaded the 10-page purple paper, and it actually immediately summarized this for me. So like, this is exactly the same use case that Jim said. As you can see, it actually did a good job of summarizing it, and summarization algorithms are getting better with time. And I just thought building a business case, that was important. So the good thing about ChatGPT is you can actually ask it questions as though you were interacting with a human being. So I just did a follow-on question. I read the sentence. It was a little generic. So I just said, tell me more about what you mean by a business case. And this is what it said. It said, these are the 8 steps on outlining a business case for investing in skilling technology. So you can actually take tons and tons of white papers, purple papers, case studies that get published on the internet, ask ChatGPT to summarize it for you. And actually, because time is of essence to all of you, everybody is short on time. You don't have the time nor the interest to read everything in the word. So you can actually use it to summarize it and then finally decide which paper to read. It's as simple as that. So what could usually take hours can now be done in a matter of minutes. So this is a very simple use case that you can put to use from tomorrow. And we are actually bringing the same capability to Disperse's products. We are actually, here is a quick video of what summarization capabilities available on Disperse. The new search of the Disperse interface, it allows you to search courses, free content, videos, podcasts, and it also summarizes them for you. So apart from giving you a description of a course or an article or a video that you get from YouTube or from your course provider, we've actually used ChatGPT to actually pretty much take the course on your behalf and summarize that for you. And a summary is much better than a description. A description tells you what is there in a course or an article. Summary actually gives you the content itself. So this is not meant to be a substitute for not taking the course, but it's meant to be a decision-making tool for you to decide whether to take a course or not. Because in today's world, availability of content is not a problem. In fact, there is too much content available. What's the real problem is, what content do I read? What is the next course do I take that's relevant? That's a good use of my time. And Disperse's summarization capability will solve that problem for you. We're also doing things like take recordings of virtual training sessions and send them as summaries, the way Zoom sends meeting summaries, which again can be interesting. And a lot of companies that we speak to, especially in banking and financial services, they've got hours and hours of instructional training recordings, and nobody watches them. You really don't want a person who's onboarded to watch 6 hours of video. But what you could actually give them is these summaries. These will be quite helpful, and we're bringing those natively into the Disperse platform. Likewise, just as Netflix sends you movie recommendations to watch, a Disperse platform sends you course recommendations depending on your current role or your career aspirations. Now we're actually adding summaries as well for that on that email. And we expect this to improve adoption of the learning platform or any learning program that you have. So that's summarization for you. What ChatGPT can do for you as a summarizer, which you can use in your job tomorrow, or what you can expect from a vendor like Disperse. Then we go to the most important part. So what we just did was a warm-up. Let me just go to some of the more interesting use cases of ChatGPT and generative AI. You can actually use ChatGPT or generative AI as your instructional designer. Instructional design is a very difficult skill. It's a dying skill, if you ask me. the ability to take a lot of content, a lot of materials, and compress it and present it in a digital friendly manner is a difficult skill. Now, you know, have ChatGPT. Here are some examples. So here's a prompt. I just said, I want to deliver a 1-hour training session on how to use data effectively for decision making. And I asked ChatGPT, can you give me a structure for this session? How do I do this in an hour? And it immediately gave me, here's what you introduce. Here is what you should do in part 1, part 2, and part 3. And these are very prescriptive instructions. It's a very good thought starter. It's more than a thought starter. It actually gives you something very, very meaty to work with. You can use it to ask icebreaker questions. What is a good icebreaker question for this session? And it actually gives you a very, very good answer. I'll let you read this. You can use it for generating assessment questions. So I'm sure most of you use a learning management system, and most learning management systems like Disperse allow you to ingest assessment questions in the form of an Excel. So what you could ask ChatGPT to do is say, here is a topic, and here is the format of the Excel. Can you give me 5 questions? And the topic can either be described as a simple sentence, or you could also say, here is a PowerPoint I have. Read the PowerPoint and help me generate 5 assessment questions out of it. And you could be super detailed about what sort of questions you want. You could say, generate 15 questions for me. 5 of them have to be very simple. Another 5 of them have to be situation based. Another 5 of them have to be recall based, and so on. The more imaginative you get, the better answer you will get, but make sure you always vet the answer. Do not trust ChatGPT as is. Think of it as something that's giving you something that's 80% correct, but you always have to test it. That's why Microsoft calls it a co-pilot. It's not the pilot, it's your co-pilot. But still, this is actually quite an interesting use case. What we are doing at Disperse is saving you the trouble of going to ChatGPT and typing these prompts. We are bringing the ability to create engaging content from any kind of input. When I say content, it can be different kinds of videos. We are experimenting with 2 kinds of videos: talking videos, which is a personality, a person talking; reel-like videos like the ones you see on Instagram; classic courseware, which are mobile friendly; and more interestingly, podcasts. I'll show you an example of a podcast that generative AI did for us. And the input to all of that is the content that you already have. Every company in the world has expertise embedded in the form of PowerPoint files, or probably as documents, or probably as recordings of some of the training sessions that you've done internally. Now, we could take some of that or all of that and convert them into engaging formats that millennials and Gen Z of today actually love. So here's an example. This is a very famous iPhone video launch of Steve Jobs that he did in 2007, way back. The first iPhone was launched. He spoke about
is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator.
So this is the input that we took, which is a famous 50-minute video, and we converted it into a podcast. And this is how the podcast sounded.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're finally here at the iPhone release event.
I know, right? This is such a big deal. Steve Jobs has been teasing this for years.
I've been waiting for this day for so long. He said it's a revolutionary product that will change everything.
Yeah, he mentioned how Apple has introduced a few of these revolutionary products before, like the Macintosh and the iPod.
And now he's introducing 3 products in one: a widescreen iPod, a mobile phone, and an internet communicator.
It's crazy to think that all of these features are in one device. He called it the iPhone.
Exactly. He said it's not just a phone, it's a leapfrog product that's smarter and easier to use than any other mobile device.
So you look at the quality of the podcast. This was generated by a computer program. Can you believe it? And it's presented in a format like 2 people are talking, and these 2 people are fictional characters. They don't even exist. But it's presented as a neutral observation by 2 people about some sort of content. Now imagine giving boring risk management and InfoSec training videos in the form of a conversation. Imagine giving dry theoretical subjects in the form of a conversation. Now that's actually possible. And this is what we are bringing to the Disperse products. We are not just bringing the ability to create courseware, but also podcasts. Likewise, this summer, Disperse will have our first big generative AI powered assessment generation capability. We'll be able to take any input that you have on our learning platform, be it videos, PowerPoints, SCORM packages, and convert them into assessment questions. And the assessment questions come with different difficulty levels. You could say, create 5 easy questions. Easy questions are just understanding questions, just reproduce what's there in the content. You could also use it to create very difficult questions, which are situational assessment questions. So it'll the algorithm will interpret the content and actually formulate a situation and ask you to respond to it. It'll generate the question for you. It'll generate the options for you. It'll also tell you what the correct answer is. All you need to do as an instructional designer or as head of L&D or as a subject matter expert is make sure it does the right thing. 90% of the time it is right, but there are some occasions where it could get it wrong. We are bringing similar capabilities to authoring not just content, to also authoring pathways, where you could say, I want a learning pathway focused on negotiations and bargaining for our sales executives, and it will automatically look at your content catalog that includes Udemy or LinkedIn courses that you have access to, and create a simple sequence of content that combines internal content from your paid partners, as well as free content, and create a very unique pathway. That's another capability that we are adding on Disperse. All right, so let me pause at this point. So Jim, what do you think about these capabilities, not just on what's coming on Disperse, but about generative AI itself, and how can you use it as an instructional designer to create effective manager training?
I think AI is crossing, for me, the Rubicon I didn't think could be crossed when it comes to management training. And that is so much about leading people is about reading a situation, reading a person, having EQ, and it's about behavior. And in a video training module, which is past me, just take it in. You don't get any behavioral practice out of that. GenAI can actually give you feedback on your response. You can go through interactive training and learn, hey, that response was not so good. Here's a better response. That ability to bring coaching real time back to someone on how you lead people, how do you deal with a performance issue, how do you deal with teamwork not going well, and really get some counsel. And I think when you get to the point where you're on the cusp of video, where you can do role plays and practice, and the AI can help you practice, we're in a really wonderful new place when it comes to helping people lead other people more effectively.
Absolutely. I think coaching is a fantastic example that you gave. It's a very advanced use case that some technology vendors are bringing. And the challenge is the ability to create an effective coaching intervention that is relevant to your company. But that's now doable with generative AI. I think that's a terrific example that you gave. Ken?
Yeah, and to build on that, and Subbu, I think you'll appreciate this because it's almost like a paid public announcement for Disperse. But one of the things we've seen help our clients is one of the challenges with frontline leaders. Everyone says, oh, they're the most important part of a business, but very few companies have found a way to invest in developing them. And through GenAI, and just the examples that you gave, you can now make it ubiquitous and make it accessible for frontline leaders without having to pull them off their role for days or weeks at a time. And with the summarization of key points so that they don't have to sit through a 5-day workshop, they can learn about decision making and how to be, to Jim's point, even how to be compassionate and a good listener through instructional design generated learning and training opportunities. So pretty exciting, I think, for there's no reason why we don't better prepare frontline leaders to help drive business growth through developing people and leading their people.
Absolutely. It's good that you mentioned how it could actually benefit the frontline. Absolutely bang on. Thank you, Ken and Jim. Now let me go to the third big capability. How can you use GenAI as your learning analyst and as your ROI partner? Because the number one question that gets asked of L&D leaders is, what's the ROI on this one? It's very simple at the end of the day. You can actually use this as an analyst itself. It's a very smart analyst that you never had as an L&D head. So you can take, for a start, you can take out simple reports that come from your LMS. So here is an example of a report that comes out of the Disperse LMS. It gives you by user, by designation, by department, by your leadership level, how much time was spent in a particular time during a particular time frame over a 3-month period. Now I just asked the simple question: can you tell me which departments have the most power learners? And bang, it looked at it and it gave me 3 or 4 answers. Not only does it tell you the answer to the question, it can actually create charts for you. So here is what it said. It said customer experience had 30 power learners, sales and marketing had 7, shared services had 6, and product had 4. It also told me that you could also look at certain other metrics on how to actually classify a power learner. It gave it by designation. So the ability to cut, slice, dice data can be done at a few prompts. And the more detailed a prompt you can give, the better it gets. So you could pretty much create a deck with it. You could say, here is a learning impact presentation. I want to have 12 decks. And deck 1 is how does learning hours change with time. Slide 2 is which providers have the highest impact. Slide 3 is which departments spend the most amount of time. Slide 4 is I could actually give it some performance data, some learning data, and say, can performance actually predict, can learning actually predict performance? You could actually ask it very, very detailed questions, and you could actually create a very compelling data-led impact deck with the help of ChatGPT. It requires a little bit of work, but certainly far less work than you would have to do yourself if you had to actually crunch the numbers yourself. Like I said, it's a very, very smart assistant. What would traditionally take 5 days can actually be done in a day. Here are some more examples of certain other prompts that you could actually give. These prompts need to be accompanied with the right data, but the data can be in a raw format. It doesn't have to be analyzed. It can actually do the inciting for you. And one of the most hard skills to develop is the ability to incite from data. But ChatGPT can do that for you. Generative AI can do that for you. And by the way, I use the word ChatGPT in this presentation, but it's sort of, think of it as synonymous with any generative AI algorithm out there. ChatGPT is the one that we're all familiar with. That's the one that I use, which is why I said it, but it applies to Llama or Bard or any large language model. Now, let me now go to the 4th use case, which is how can you use it as a creative designer? Images are a very important asset if you're an L&D leader, because how well a course gets consumed, how well learning gets consumed depends on the quality of the images. There have been reports that have published that says that a good poster can actually improve the consumption or at least the enrollment to a course by up to 50%. So the right choice of images is actually important. So here is a simple image generation prompt. I just said, I'm designing a poster for my course on my insurance company's digital products. Help me with an image that shows the ability to purchase products digitally on a mobile phone. And this is the image that it came up with. Image prompting is an art. You could actually get very, very specific about it. You could say, give me a 3D 3D animation-like image. Give me a comic-like image. Give me a water painting. Give me a mural. And if you're artistically inclined, you can actually give it very, very specific prompts, because these large language models and image models have seen trillions of images. You could use it for creating learning banners like these, and I'm sure you create these all the time. You don't have to wait for a creative designer in your team to have capacity. It's always a problem, but you can now do this at the click of a button. But watch out for this. Generative AI is not great at placing text on images. It's actually quite terrible at it today. So if you see here, I gave some text to be placed on the images. I said generative AI technologies, but look at the spelling mistakes. So do not use it for placing text on images. Just use it for generating images. Text has to be placed externally. I think some algorithms will get better at it, but so far, this is one gotcha that I'd like to point about when I speak about generative AI for images. Now let me go to the next use case, which is how can I use it as a motion graphics designer? This is where I'm sort of going into the future. Already, generative AI can do a lot for you, but can it generate videos for you? The answer is not truly yet. Google's launched a new algorithm called Video Poet, and NVIDIA has launched something very similar. You get video out of it today, but those videos are not very meaningful. For example, here's an example of a video that Google Poet generated. This is a rabbit playing a piano. I know this looks interesting, but I still don't see this technology ready yet for prime time. But in 1 year it can change. But this is where the world is getting. My guess is by early 2025, the technology will mature to a point where you can create short videos, like 3-4 second snippets that are meaningful, and that you can use them in either in marketing campaigns for internal learning or for creating even learning content. But if you ask it to create a 5-minute video on a topic, that's a long way away. You'll have to break it into 5-second chunks and do it. But still, it's interesting. You will see this technology get better with time. All right. Now I gave you several examples, and there are many more. But I want to pause here and ask the panelists. I'll start with Ken first. Given the possibilities of what you just saw, what skills and mindsets does the L&D team and the broader HR team need to leverage these technologies at work? Are there any new skills that come to your mind? And please also talk about the mindsets. I know we spoke about change, openness to change, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think the skill and mindsets that come to my mind, a couple different examples. The first one is clearly agility and adaptability, but bringing that with action. So making sure that we get engaged, we get involved, and we learn all that we can. And then how do we take that and apply it to help our businesses grow? The other one that I have to say I'm pretty excited about, and in my career, I've found times when we've been able to dive into micro situations and really understand details, but not necessarily have enough data to see the big picture and what that can mean, or in some cases have a pretty good sense conceptually of what the forest looked like, but miss the trees. And I think with GenAI, we really have the opportunity to, and there's several good examples on this with employee work experience, where you can go into an individual employee and really understand where they are in their journey in their workplace. Are they excited about being there? Are they thinking about doing something different? Are they a potential passive candidate for another role, or are they really fully engaged? And then you can expand that to see the whole department, the whole division, the whole company, and where they are and what's causing that level of engagement, which to me is pretty exciting. And HR leaders really diving in with that adaptability and action to kind of take advantage of the insights that can give both the micro and macro look. So a lot of interesting opportunities, I think. Jim, your thoughts?
Well, those were great. I can just say ditto, but which is a really old term. But I had maybe a permutation and one new one. The curiosity is something that I think just propels so much, because when you're curious, you want to go learn. Well, what could happen here? How can I make this better? What do I not know I'd like to know more about? So that curiosity is an attribute that just drives improvement, if you have it. So adopting a curious mindset is, I think, really enabling. Now, on the back end, there's something that the HR function historically has really, to use a technical term, sucked at. And what is that? Measurement. Okay, so we talked about ROI. So really being rigorous. The language of business is results. The language of results best is numbers. So really we've talked about it, using AI to measure, show progress, show payoff, and do so more robustly. We could turn this from the soft and fuzzy function to hard quantitative outcomes that show up on the P&L. It's doable now. It's a lot more doable, a lot easier. What AI can take a lot of that number crunching out of our lives.
Absolutely. No, well said, well said. And I like the fact that both of you touched a lot on adaptability, curiosity, because the natural reaction when you see some sort of a technology like this is to feel threatened. And I'll give you an example from Disperse. We've now built a tool that can respond to RFPs automatically. So you give it a detailed learning platform RFP with hundreds of questions. You give it to our AI model. which is trained on our own prior responses, it'll actually give you the answer in 5 minutes. So what used to take 3 days of a pre-sales team is now possible in five minutes. Of course, it's 90% accurate. Now, the moment we actually gave this tool to our pre-sales team, they actually felt very threatened. They said, I'm very comfortable using this the old way. But actually, this is actually supposed to help them, because they can now file RFPs, respond to RFPs much faster. If they could do 10 RFPs a month, now they could do 100. So it's actually an opportunity. And the only way you see the opportunity is by being curious and by being adaptable. So absolutely right. So I think both Jim and Ken did a wonderful job of highlighting the mindsets that are required to leverage this wonderful technology boom. But I'm going to talk about two very hard skills that each of you needs to cultivate to actually leverage this game-changing invention. The first is called prompt engineering, which in simple English is the ability to use prompts to give you the output for day-to-day work. So think of it as the new Excel. When Excel was first launched, the time that you invested to learn it well, to actually use it, to use formulas, to use pivot tables, to use sum ifs and count ifs, you need to invest the same amount of time to create prompts. And I can tell you it's not as difficult as it seems. And here are 5 levels in prompt engineering. At Disperse, we think about skills in a very nuanced way. Whenever we craft a new skill, we create 5 proficiency levels. The good news is you only need to be at the most at level 2. So level 1 is the ability to create prompts to obtain an output. And level 2 is the ability to create very detailed prompts so that the output is a lot more structured. For example, the ability to get an Excel file or a PowerPoint out of ChatGPT is what you need to be good at. And there are lot of courses available online on effective prompting, on best practices, on do's and don'ts. For example, you need to give very clear instructions. You need to actually say, if it's a multi-step prompt, you can say step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, and step 4, give me the result. So you need to be as detailed as possible. So there are some very nice courses on how to give effective prompts, and this can be taken in an hour. So level 2 is where you need to be. You don't need to be at level 3, 4, or 5. Those are for the data scientists and for the geeks who are actually building applications. As an HR leader, you need to be at level 2. As an L&D leader, you need to be at level 2. That's the good news. And I thought the first quote here sort of captured it. I thought this was, to me, the quote of 2023, which said the hottest new programming language is English. You can actually do so much with actually English. Okay, now the second skill is called AI delegation. This in simple English is the ability to leverage AI, particularly generative AI, to optimize your function. And this skill is not just required for HR and L&D, it's actually required for every functional leader. So if you're head of CS, if you're head of customer success, or if you're head of product support or customer support, you need to have the skill. If you're head of sales, you need to have the skill. This is a far more nuanced skill. It has got 5 levels as well, like most of our skills. But I believe an L&D head or an HR head has to be at level 3. This is your ability to understand different applications of AI and redesign your function, the HR function or the L&D function, for it to be AI first, which means you need to be able to redesign your, if in the old world, you are actually leveraging a set of vendors to create content, you need to redesign how content is created. You need to employ a GenAI first learning platform, which has got some sort of creator economy capability, and then leverage your internal subject matter experts to create content. That is a change in process. And only you can actually do this as an L&D head. Likewise, if you're head of customer support, instead of having agents respond to tickets, you need to be able to create a flow where certain tickets that are quite common can actually be done in an automated fashion through a bot, through a much more intelligent bot. So this is about redesigning your function with AI at the center. That's what AI delegation is. So if you're an L&D executive, you need to be at level 2. If you're an L&D manager, you need to be at level 2. And if you're an L&D head or a CLO, you need to be at level 3. The same for HR heads and the same for any functional head. So these are 2 important functional skills that are at play. to help you leverage this technology quite well. It's not just about writing prompts. It's also about being able to select the right technology vendor to be able to actually improve efficiency of your function. Right. Now, what capability on GenAI would you actually seek from your LMS LXP vendors? I'll start with you, Ken.
So, I mean, here,
What would you ask them? What would you ask this person, for example?
what's that?
What would you ask your
Yeah,
your,
I think just a, you know, a quick warning to HR and L&D leaders is, you know, don't be fooled by the shiniest object out there, and to, you know, dive deep into the data, do your research, see where they've had successes, see where they've learned from their failures and how they respond. And, you know, I think that's an important lesson to not, you know, measure twice and cut once, I guess, would be simple. And I'll turn it over to Jim to maybe give more specific examples.
Well, I think that's exactly the point, though, is really dig in deep. Talk, you know, just like we do with candidates for jobs. Go get some references. Find out who's used them before, what have they delivered, ask those references for measurable outcomes. Did they stick? Did they last? And then I might add to that, I'm a big fan of sort of sharing the risk. So you say you can increase our productivity, our outcomes. Let's put some dollars to that, and you know, you get some money up front for your services, but you bring the goodness to our business, you get a little share back, and if you don't, well, not so much. Put some skin in the game.
Got it. Some sort of contingency based skin in the game contracts. No, I love that. I love that. So Disperse is betting on generative AI as a technology vendor in a big way. We're investing in authoring capabilities, the ability to create content, assessments, and podcasts from any kind of content. Our personalization capability is getting better thanks to GenAI. You can actually do deep search into content, ask it specific questions, and it can give you an answer. Summarization, I spoke about that. Better goal setting for learning with inputs from your IDPs, for example. And we're also trying to make life easy for the learning and development administrators and talent managers by bringing in the ability to administer the platform in a conversational way and author pathways at scale. So this is sort of our generative AI roadmap in a nutshell. Last question. I'm going to start with Jim. How do you handle the perception that this is a threat to jobs?
Well, I think I touched on that earlier, and that is it's inclusion. It is bringing people into the process. Don't push it on them. Say you're going to use AI. You're going to do it. You know, if you don't do it, you're going to get fired. All that kind of pushy stuff. But get people involved and get them included in figuring out how to use it, when to use it, how to apply it, how to measure it, and so forth. When people are a part of the change, then resistance goes away. I think that really is the key to any change. And maybe the one predecessor, of course, is having, and your point on that level 3, is having a clear picture of what you're doing with it, why you're doing it, and so forth, and having a vision or purpose or mission up front, which those people are a part of as well. And then I think the threat for the most part, except for those who are just, you know, just if it's not there, the people are in the if it's not broke, don't fix it mindset. Well, you may not be able to help them, but everybody else, they're part of the solution. They'll help.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. So let me summarize this by saying 3 things that I would ask of you. The first is embrace prompt engineering in your day-to-day life. Make that as integral to your life as a computer, as a mobile phone, as a social media app, and urge your teams to do the same. Tell them it's sort of inevitable. There would be questions on security, will my company data be misused, etc. And there are solutions for all of that. Second is ask your vendors for GenAI capabilities. Don't ask them for administrative capabilities. You know, we did an analysis of, if you look at most LMS RFPs, it usually has 400, 500 items. About 395 of them are administrative in nature. Can I have an approval workflow? Can I have the ability to administer meeting rooms and training, etc.? And only about 5% of it is actually earmarked for AI. Change that. Ask more AI capabilities from your vendors. That's when they will actually AI capabilities from your vendors. That's when they will actually and most importantly, this is a very selfish ask. Pay them more. Only if you incentivize your vendors will they actually be urged to innovate. And unfortunately, HR tech and learning tech companies don't command the same kind of prices as a sales or marketing tech platform. but it's as strategic as sales. You ask any CEO, what is your most strategic requirement in terms of people? And he or she will say that I need to upskill them. But how much do you pay your learning platform? You actually pay them peanuts. Pay them for more and push them to innovate. I know I'm slightly conflicted in saying that, but this is an important ask. And last, redesign every team in your company, not just within HR and L&D, also beyond, with generative AI as the new Excel. Think of this as the new Excel that's going to power the way you that's going to power the way you work, and it's going to power the way you actually deal with computing itself as a paradigm. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd love to take any questions. I know I'm just 2 minutes short of closing. I'm happy to go over by another 5 minutes to take any more questions. So, Supriya, are there any specific questions you want to bring up for Jim?
I think, Subbu, I think there's a very interesting question I got from Valerie, like thoughts on how you navigate outputs of GenAI when it's been trained on data that is not always accurate or correct.
Valerie, great question.
Yeah.
So, which is why, like I told you, it's not a replacement for a human being, at least not yet. Any output of generative AI has to be vetted by a human being. You should never create a workflow or a situation where generative AI's output is the final output that is fed to your customer or to a person who's facing your customer. The technology is not yet there. The only way to do it is use it as a co-pilot, use it as an efficiency improvement tool, and you'll realize that it actually cuts down the time required to do a lot of mundane tasks by as high as 80%.
I think one question to both of you, Subbu and Jim, how do you get GenAI to read a spreadsheet? That's a very interesting question.
How do you use GenAI to train a spreadsheet? Okay, so this is where you require level 4 or level 5 of prompt engineering. You need to build an internal model. So our data science team built an internal model. They trained another generative AI model on our past 100 RFPs and use that as an input to actually respond to an RFP. So that's where we go into a little bit of advanced application development. Any suggestions on resources or prompts to use generative AI to create a PowerPoint presentation? We'll share this deck with you. This deck itself has a lot of resources on how you could create decks. But you could just Google up and just play with it. So just say, I want to create a presentation and these are my 5 slides. Here is the data. You will start seeing that it gives you output that's good. And as and when you refine the prompts, the PowerPoint gets better. So what tools can be used to generate images? ChatGPT has a image generation algorithm called DAL-E. It's the most recent version is just mind-blowing. You could just give it simple English prompts and it would actually generate images for you. We will share the recording. Yes, we will share the slides as well. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our panelists, Jim and Ken. Thank you very much for your time. This was great.
It's been a joy. It's been a joy. Do we still have, how many people, can you see how many people we still have with us?
We have 85.
Can I take a minute or two to share that story I told you the other day?
Yes, please.
So I think principles around pretty much everything in life are pretty much timeless. And there's a principle I learned about learning a long time ago when I had responsibility for learning and development for about 78,000 people, including the operational training. And I had the chance to meet a guy who just changed my mindset about this. And I think it is so, his principle, which I'm gonna get to in just a second, is so applicable to what we can do with Gen AI. The guy's name was Mike Vance, and he was head of training at Disney when Disneyland started. He was the first head of Disney University. And they really transformed the theme park experience. Before it was carnivals, and they were pretty scummy places to go. So Mike had this principle. He said he wanted everybody who worked, every cast member, that's Disney's language for employees, every cast member to be an A student. When they showed up on the job and they completed their initial onboarding training, they could go there. They knew how to operate the ride. They knew how to operate the cash register. They knew how to clean whatever it was they had to clean. They were expert. So that there was no doubt they could do the job. Everybody's an A student. And they set a standard. They do, back before we had all this capability, test people once, test them twice, test them 3 times, reteach them in between the testing so they could do it. And if they couldn't do it after 3 times, they wouldn't go into the job because they weren't an A student. They wouldn't let anyone but an A student into the workforce. So when I think about what Gen AI can do, the customization of learning, the assessment of a learner before they go in, so they only get stuff they need because they don't need all the other stuff. with a one-size-fits-all solution, the ability to measure that, the confidence they can have because of the practice they can get with what GenAI can do, we can really make everyone an A student. And imagine if in your workplace, if every worker, when they started their job, they were 100%er. The level of performance and productivity would just be off the charts.
That's right. Absolutely right. Well said. Everybody can be an A player. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you very much.